Okay, so I did my research on Edward Albee. To begin with, I typed in his name and looked him up on Google, which brought me to my first website, probably the most helpful website, which was the Academy of Achievement. And this had a really lengthy interview with him, and it helped to really capture his spirit and his way of thinking about life on more of an edited version. It's not an autobiography because he couldn't get a chance to edit what he said. Although I don't know if Albee would actually do that. He's very outspoken and he's very daring, uh, which is something I got to know in the interview. But that gave me a ton of quotes, which is awesome for understanding his later plays and why maybe he became such a hot topic of discussion. So that was extremely helpful. And I got to know about his adoptive history with his parents and his theater background and how that really played a role in his sick nature of like thinking about death and loneliness and sex and kind of the strangest things and almost some of the saddest things in an abstract way. So that was really helpful. From there, I actually started reading two of his most famous plays, The Zoo Story and then The American Dream. And knowing that he's an abstract playwright, I was a little nervous going into it, but they were oddly enjoyable. It really helped to understand his plays in general, which then I could kind of reach out to see what people are talking about him and see the conversation. But knowing his past, it makes sense why he talked about the things he did in his plays. Like the Zoo Story is so odd and abstract, and it talks about such sad things about this lonely man who wanted just to talk to somebody but couldn't really. He had a social aspect to him that was just really strange, which is something of Albee. Albee is sort of like that, which is why he is so controversial, like I said before. So moving from there, I went to JSTOR and actually read a article by Lucina P. Gabbard, and that was The Triptych of Abandonment. And pretty much to begin with the argument in this article, I've got some more notes here. But the point of this author was that if you know Albee and know his past, he's not as shocking when you see his plays. It makes sense that this poor man who had such a rough background would write such shocking things. And that it shouldn't be such a misunderstanding by audiences, but rather that it is an understanding of people who don't have such a kind background. So from then on, I moved to this book, Understanding Edward Albee by Matthew C. Rudane. And he is a huge advocate of Albee, and you could tell throughout reading this book that he really appreciates the daringness that Albee takes in his plays, not only aesthetic risks, which is what he talks about, but also linguistic risks, and that he has a richness and meaning through his language that can be confusing, but not if you actually know Albee himself. And obviously you peck at it, you're going to understand it eventually. But so that's that book. A huge advocate of Albee, which leads me more to a different book, which is Edward Albee, very clever title again, by C.W.E. Bigsby. And this author compiled many critics' views of Albee and his plays, and he really dives into the conversation. Although he claims not to be on one side or the other, really, he understands the topic, I guess. So he included people like Philip Roth, who critiqued Albee on the basis that his language is confusing and that he is incapable of putting the real subject at the center of the action of the play and that it's watered down. because of his language and what he focuses on, the real message is watered down, and that's what Roth argues. On the other hand, C.W.E. Bigsby includes Harold Clurman, who states Albee as a master craftsman who's able to keep his audience entertained forever. So there are both sides here, and this helps in understanding the conversation really more at hand. Moving to something more modern, though, I moved to Edward Albee, another very intriguing title by Toby Zinman, and he analyzes every single play of Albee's and really creates a conversation which is closer to what we do in class. So understanding more of this impact of these plays on teaching styles of American theater, and really understanding the lasting impact that he has, it really gives you a good sense of why he is the topic of conversation. So that's kind of the extent of my research. I've been really enjoying it. Obviously, Albee is very conflicting, especially because of his darkness of views, but I think I'm getting a gist of really the importance of him. So yeah, that's the end.